Hello and welcome to the Farming Week, the podcast from Agriland that keeps you up to date with all the latest in Irish agriculture. I'm Charles O'Donnell and I'm joined by Agriland editor Stella Meehan and our beef specialist Breffney O'Brien. Well, recent weeks have seen a number of important scheme developments, and this week specifically saw the start of balancing payments to all eligible farmers under year one of the Sheep Improvement Scheme. These balancing payments, worth $2.17 million, bring the total amount paid to farmers under the scheme for 2023 to over $21 million. But we're going to start this week with an issue that regular listeners of the Farming Week will know has been ongoing for several months now, and that's the issue of VAT refunds for unregistered farmers. This all started when farmers found they could no longer get VAT refunds for items of farm expenditure that they previously could have got the refund for. This raised questions over what the guidance from the Revenue Commissioners was on this matter. Revenue had previously said that they would publish updated guidance, and this guidance arrived this week. So Stella, are we any the wiser?
Well, Charles, it depends on who you ask. I suppose Revenue would feel that they have issued guidance which makes things clearer. Farm organisations and farmers perhaps may be feeling that it's still not clarified and there's still confusion around it. But I suppose the new guidance was published this week by Revenue on the application of the VAT refund order, and that's for flat rate farmers. So the legislation sets out that farmers can only claim refunds for VAT in relation to three sort of areas, Charles. So the areas involved are the construction, extension, alteration or reconstruction of farm buildings and structures. So that's really with permanent buildings and structures. The second is fencing, draining or reclamation of farmland. And then the third relates to the construction, erection or installation of qualifying equipment for the microgeneration of electricity for use mainly in the farm business. Now, the new guidance comes after months of uncertainty, as you said there, over the issue of certain VAT refunds. Unregistered farmers have been able to claim back VAT on certain qualifying expenditure, as they call it, under the refund order since 1972. But farming organisations have been at loggerheads with Revenue over the issue of VAT refunds for certain items of equipment which they previously had been allowed to claim on. So this week, Revenue stated that mobile or movable farm equipment and machinery are not allowed under the order. So merely fixing, attaching or bolting a piece of equipment, say, or machinery to a building does not qualify it for a refund under the order. And that's exactly what Revenue has said. So this means that farming equipment not covered by the flat rate farmers refund order includes automatic calf feeders, cow mats, not fixed robotic sprayers and slurry bags. So Revenue has set out in the new guidance document that farm buildings are described as buildings that are fixed to or in the ground which cannot be easily dismantled or moved. So according to Revenue, in all cases, the building or structure must be designed solely for the purposes of a farming business. And examples of farm buildings include cow or calf sheds, maybe cubicle sheds or slatted sheds, or sheds with parlours in them. So examples then of farming structures, which is different to farming buildings, Charles, include cattle grids, farmyards, silage pits, silos and slatted tanks. Now, there are some farming products that may also be considered structures. So if it's not getting too complicated, I'll give you a brief outline, but these include silo feed bins, silo milk tanks, slurry pits, slurry tanks, or trough or water trough systems. Now, there is a lot of detail to consider here, and I won't have time to go into all of it here on the podcast. But we have outlined it all on the Agriland site if you want to click on our article there about the Revenue guidance. And there's also very good information on our sister podcast, the Agri Focus podcast this week, which is also in the podcast section of the website and on any of the podcast platforms like Apple and Spotify, where our deputy news editor, Francis MacDonald, sat down with Marty Murphy. Marty is the head of tax with IFAC. And following this guidance, which was issued this week by Revenue, Marty sits down with Francis to discuss all the ins and outs and what's relevant to farmers. So that's also worth a listen.
And Stella, has there been any reaction to this from the farm organisations? Do they feel that this has been cleared up now? Or
well, you can well imagine there's been reaction, Charles. I suppose the latest reaction came from the Irish Creamery Milk Suppliers Association, the ICMSA. Now, they have long held the view that this needs to be clarified further. They are one of the farm organisations I mentioned earlier that are in loggerheads, I suppose, with revenue to get this clarified over weeks and months and even years now at this stage. But they have basically said in the ICMSA that the guidance from revenue this week still doesn't go far enough, Charles. The association said it's disappointed that a number of critical items remain not VAT refundable. So these are things like robotic scrapers and automatic calf feeders. And the ICMSA also said the guidance on bulk tanks is also confusing for farmers and more clarity is needed in relation to these as well as meal bins, Charles.
Yes, Stella, we'll wait to see if that clarity is forthcoming. But we're going to move on to the recently published Animal Identification and Movement Report from the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, which revealed some interesting figures, including the most popular sire breeds for suckler and dairy cows last year. Breffney, you have the details on this.
That's right, Charles. So the report is just published there a few weeks ago, and it detailed, I suppose, the most popular sire breed for both suckler bred calves and dairy bred calves born in 2023. So according to the report, there was a total of just over 791,000 calves registered to beef breed dams in 2023. And of these, just under 286,500 suckler cows delivered a Limousin bred calf in 2023, with Limousin sires accounting for 36.2% of the suckler calf crop last year. The second most popular suckler calf sire in 2023 was Shearing, which I suppose will not really come as a surprise to many suckler farmers, with just under 251,000 calves born in 2023 that were registered to a Shearing bull. So this accounted for 31.7% of all the suckler bred calves. Aberdeen Angus was the third most popular sire breed for suckler calves last year, and the report details that just over 93,300 suckler bred Angus sired calves were born, and these accounted for 11.8% of the suckler calf crop last year. And then I suppose following on from that, then you had Simmental, Hereford and Belgian Blue. They were the 4th, 5th and 6th consecutive most popular sires in 2023.
So then, Breffney, just on the dairy side of things, what did the report show there?
Yeah, so just looking at, I suppose, the sires for dairy cows in 2023, and naturally enough, Friesian was the most popular sire breed, accounting for 726,000 calves, or 45.2% of all dairy bred calves born last year. The second most popular sire for dairy bred calves was Angus, with 432,000 calves bred from dairy cows registered to Angus sires last year, and this accounted for 26.9% of all dairy bred calves. Hereford was the third most common calf sire last year, with 225,000 calves from the dairy herd that were registered to a Hereford sire. This accounted for 14% of all dairy bred calves. Limousin, Belgian Blue and Jersey were the 4th, 5th and 6th most popular sires for dairy cross calves born in 2023. And interestingly enough, Charles, there were actually more dairy bred calves registered to Belgian Blue sires in 2023 than were registered to Jersey sires, which is, I suppose, an interesting enough statistic from the report as well.
Thanks for that, Breffney. Moving on to the world of agribusiness. And Stella, we've seen some movement in the dairy business sector in the last week or so. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, Charles. So Roebuck Food Group PLC, which is based in Newry in County Down, confirmed in recent days that it has sold its dairy division based in County Kilkenny for €1.45 million. So this consisted of a dairy farm of 183 hectares held on a number of occupational leases with 470 milking cows. Now, the group, which is listed on the London Stock Exchange's Alternative Investment Market, that's known as AIM, it's focused on the food and agribusiness sectors. And in a stock market announcement, Roebuck Food Group confirmed the sale of its dairy division, which is made up of its wholly owned subsidiary Cantwell's Court Farm Limited, incorporated in Ireland. So it confirmed the sale of the dairy division to an unrelated partnership engaged in the Irish dairy milking industry. Now, Roebuck Food Group says its directors, quote, consider the terms of the disposal to be fair and reasonable and in the best interests of the company and its shareholders as a whole. It also detailed, Charles, that for the year ended December 31st, 2023, the dairy division had generated revenue of 1.6 million, loss after tax of 500,000, and had net assets of 1.44 million. Now, the Northern Ireland Group said the disposal of its dairy business means that the group will now focus on the milling and importation of food and ingredients and product sourcing only.
And just while we're on dairy, Stella, processors are obviously getting ready to announce their milk prices for May milk. We would expect those to be coming in the next week to 2 weeks, I suppose. The farmer organisations are looking for an increase in price, of course. But what are the latest market signals telling us?
Well, we had the GDT and the Ornua PPI this week. So the average GDT price index rose this week by 1.7%, according to the latest auction results, Charles. So there were a total of 164 bidders in that auction event, which saw 17,637 megatonne of products sold. Now, the GDT price index stands at 1,162 compared to the previous index figure in May of 1,143. So the latest result marks the highest figure recorded since October 2022. So what does that mean really for farmers? Well, the GDT auction is held twice every month, and it's a strong indicator of market sentiment. And while the latest rise is marginal, Charles, it should be well received by farmers and dairy suppliers. But then turning to the Ornua PPI, which is also of interest to the dairy sector. So the PPI for the month of May has seen a bump compared to April, with the indicative price increasing by 1.1 cent per litre. Now, the PPI figure for the month is 135.6. So that's up from the previous month's figure of 132.6. The latest PPI implies an indicative return of 39.6 cent a litre. That's inclusive of VAT and is for milk with 3.6% fat and 3.3% protein, Charles. So this figure is net of Ornua's costs to market and is an increase on the 38.5 cent per litre indicative price for April. Ornua has explained that the indicative price reflects improved market returns through the month of May. So the price accounts of an estimated member cooperative processing cost of 8.6 cent per litre for the month of May, which is adjusted quarterly in line with things like external indices of variable costs. And in other words, this is mainly energy costs. So also the Ornua value payment payable to member co-ops in the month is €10.9 million, which equated to 6.1% of gross purchases in the month. So look, it's small in many ways, like it's a marginal increase in both sort of market indices, but at the same time, any sort of move in the right direction for milk suppliers is always a good one, Charles.
Absolutely, Stella. We're going to move on now to something completely different, and that's inter-county football. You probably didn't think you'd be hearing about that on the Farming Week, but of course there are footballers and hurlers up and down the country who, when they're not on the playing field, are out in the fields and sheds of their own farms at home. And Agriland recently caught up with one of them, Stella.
Yeah, so in the past week, Charles, Agriland visited the farm of Monaghan, inter-county footballer and dairy farmer Darren Hughes, where we chatted to him about how he balances the challenging demands of being a top inter-county footballer with the labour-intensive nature of farming. So Darren and his father Francis milk a herd of 105 cows on a 50-hectare farm in Ballinode in County Monaghan. At the moment, Darren is focused more on farming because he's currently out of action on the football end of things due to an injury. Now, while Darren admitted that it can be demanding juggling farming and football, he explained to our reporter Ronan Sands that he wouldn't have it any other way. Take a listen.
Tricky ones whose people would be of the impression that it'd be tough farming and playing football, but From my point of view, I probably couldn't do anything else. Like I'm my own boss here. I'm flexible with my time. I'm lucky enough I have my dad here on site as well. If the pressure's on, or if I have to get away for trainings early or weekends away or that, so I'm lucky enough from that point of view. It's a pretty compact system here. Like most of the run a 10-week breeding season. Here come you be thinking you're ready to leave the house at 6 o'clock some evenings to go training. There could be 4 or 5 cows ready to calve or something, but here the management are pretty understanding, and there does be some evenings that you don't be there on time, or maybe you don't make it at all. Or
Darren Hughes there, Monaghan footballer and dairy farmer, speaking to Agriland this week. Fair play to him, Charles. He's no stranger to hard graft anyway, that's for sure.
Certainly not, Stella, and it really shows the level of commitment that inter-county GAA players put into their playing careers. But we're going to change codes now and switch from football to sheep shearing and the 2024 All-Ireland and All-Nations Sheep Shearing and Wool Handling Championship. Stella, can you tell us a bit more about this?
Yes, Charles, the good and the great descended on one of Ireland's jewels last weekend when they made their way to Mountbellew in East Galway for the All Nations Sheep Shearing and Wool Handling Championships, says she, with no bias whatsoever. But anyway, they got the weather for it for the most part, and there were some serious demonstrations of ability on display at Keepack Shearfest at the Mart in Mountbellew. It was the first time, Charles, that Mountbellew hosted the event, which saw competitors from Ireland, Northern Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, France, Australia, and even New Zealand, all vying for the top prizes across 13 categories. Richard Jones from Wales took home the top spot in the All Nations category, with Irishman Jack Robinson finishing in third place. But Robinson did take home first place in this year's All Ireland Open category. We have a full list of winners on Agriland if you want to check those out. And the women performed very well also in the wool handling categories. There's also a wee video on Agriland if you want to get a sense of the competition over the 2 days. And though I wasn't at the evening entertainment myself, I'm confidently informed that there was a fantastic attendance and plenty of dancing and Lucasades enjoyed by all. So well done to the organisers.
Yes, well done indeed to all involved. But unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Please don't forget to rate, review and follow The Farming Week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love if you could spare some time to give us 5 stars and share The Farming Week with anyone you think might be interested. From Stella, Breffney and myself, have a good weekend.